Welcome. Take a moment to breathe in and out. Let all stress melt away. A realm of captivating narratives is on the horizon. Just relax and let the story unfold. Let's begin. A gossamer veil of dusk had begun to descend upon the Halcyon Hotel, a weather-beaten relic whispering tales of bygone eras in this nondescript corner of the world. It perched at the end of the town, exuding an uncanny charm, its old timbers groaning under the weight of stories they held within. Its faded facades held a quiet dignity, a spectral beauty, as if serving as the keepers of time itself. On this particular evening, the hotel had an unexpected visitor. A lone cab pulled up to the entrance, and out stepped Alexander Maloney, a man shrouded in a solitude that seemed almost tangible. His gaze took in the old building, eyes lingering over the worn-out bricks and the slightly rusted iron sign that hung by the entrance. A faint smile grazed his lips, as if he found comfort in the obscurity of the place. He pulled his coat tighter around him and stepped into the dimly lit lobby. From behind the reception, Agnes Bloomfield observed the newcomer, her ancient eyes studying him from behind a pair of rimmed spectacles. His solitude seemed to echo her own, an old song resonating within the confines of her weary heart. A shiver ran through her as she watched him collect the keys to room 13, a number she'd come to dread over her years of service. A bitter sense of resignation clouded her eyes, but she pressed her lips together, concealing her fears behind a professional smile. Up the creaking stairs and along the dimly lit hallway, Alexander was guided to his quarters, room 13. He unlocked the heavy wooden door, its hinges groaning in protest as if disturbed from a deep slumber. The room smelled of stale air and old furniture, and for a moment he stood at the threshold, an inexplicable chill pricking the back of his neck. Shrugging off the unease, he entered, attributing the dread to the building's antiquity. He settled his suitcase and spent the rest of the day wandering the sleepy town, intrigued by its quiet isolation and apparent disinterest in the passage of time. Yet an uncanny sensation persisted, often making him glance back over his shoulder, only to be met with empty, quiet streets. Back at the hotel, Agnes busied herself with her tasks, her thoughts wandering back to Alexander and room 13. Her memories were peopled with echoes of the room's previous occupants, each leaving with a haunted look that never quite left her mind. She knew the hotel held secrets, room 13 most of all. It was as if the room swallowed joy, leaving only a hollow emptiness. But she had to remain silent, guarding the secrets that hung in the air like spectral phantoms. As night fell, Alexander found himself standing by the window of his room, the moon casting an eerie glow over the aged room. The shadows seemed to dance on the walls, their forms shifting in the moonlight, as if whispering stories unheard. He fell into an uneasy slumber, the room's heavy silence only interrupted by the distant hooting of an owl. The dream that visited him was as unsettling as the room. Shadows moved with a will of their own, whispering voices echoed in empty halls, and faces emerged and faded into the walls. He woke in a cold sweat, the dream images blurring with the moonlit room. He tried to shake off the disorientation, tried to tell himself it was just a dream, just the product of his writer's imagination. But the whispering shadows and the cold dread persisted, creeping under his skin. At the end of the hallway, Agnes found herself standing before the door of room 13. Her knuckles hovered over the wooden surface, a silent prayer on her lips. She looked at the brass numbers nailed to the door. The cold, metallic 13 seemed to mock her fear. She thought of the man inside, the writer who'd unknowingly stepped into a web of whispers and shadows, but her lips remained sealed. All she had to offer was a silent prayer, a flicker of hope against the dark unknown. Meanwhile, Alexander found himself staring at the antique mirror across his room. His reflection seemed blurred, distorted as if the past occupants of the room had left imprints on the glass. His heart pounded against his ribs, the disquiet growing within him. But he tucked away his fear, telling himself that the quiet town and the old hotel were getting to him. He blamed his mind, so accustomed to weaving tales, for the uncanny dread. As he climbed back into his bed, the room felt colder, the shadows deeper. He cocooned himself in the covers, his gaze fixed on the dark corners of the room. The silence was heavy, the occasional creak of the building echoing through the expanse. He waited for sleep to take him once more, for the bizarre dreams that now seemed a part of his reality. Downstairs, in the dimly lit reception, the grandfather clock chimed, each note echoing through the silence of the hotel. Agnes glanced towards the stairs leading to the rooms, her heart heavy with unspoken words. Room 13 stood, encapsulated in its own world of whispered tales and veiled dread. The quiet night draped over the hotel, the Halcyon bearing the weight of its secret with a dignified silence. In room 13, Alexander found himself drifting into a restless sleep, the line between the waking world and his dreams fading into obscurity. Outside, the moon hung low, casting long, spectral shadows across the silent town. The Halcyon Hotel, with room 13 and its lone occupant, sank into the quiet hum of the night, each tick of the grandfather clock a solemn whisper in the stillness. The secrets they held were locked away, waiting for the dawn of a new day, for the turn of a new page in the tale of the nightmare in room 13. The dawn broke over the Halcyon Hotel, its first rays falling on the weathered walls, casting long, mellow shadows. Room 13 soaked in the sunlight, its somber mood masked by the deceptive warmth. Inside, Alexander awoke with a start, a vestige of his eerie dreams still clinging to his consciousness. Stifling his disquiet, he descended to the dining room, the smell of brewing coffee luring him. The room was abuzz with soft murmurs, the other guests huddled in corners, their hushed conversations seeping into the woodwork. As he seated himself at a corner table, he couldn't help but feel their gaze upon him, their whispers knotting the air around him. Each cryptic glance, every suppressed smile, seemed to bear an unsettling undertone that gnawed at his peace. From behind the counter, Agnes watched Alexander, her heart heavy with unvoiced concern. The lightness in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a growing unease that mirrored her own. Each passing moment, each subtle shift in his demeanor, gnawed at her resolve to stay silent, instigating a silent turmoil within her. Returning to his room, Alexander felt the room's chill greet him like a shroud. On his table, he found a stack of yellowed letters and a worn-out diary. As he flipped through them, whispers of past lives breathed through the brittle pages. His heart pounded as he read fragments of stories, echoes of previous occupants who had fallen prey to the room's haunting. Each line was a chilling testament to the fear he was beginning to understand. Seeking refuge from the oppressive air of the hotel, Alexander decided to explore the town. The townsfolk, much like the guests at the hotel, viewed him with veiled curiosity. Their conversations were riddled with cryptic allusions to the hotel's past, each sentence wrapped in layers of unsaid words. An old man sitting outside a tavern hummed a melancholy tune, his eyes reflecting a sadness that seemed oddly familiar. The unease from the hotel had trickled into the town, painting everything in somber hues. The second nightfall was much like the first. As Alexander lay in his bed, the room seemed to shrink around him. The walls whispered tales of despair, the shadows danced to a spectral rhythm, and his dreams were plagued by faces etched in fear. He tossed and turned, the room's aura pressing onto him, threatening to drown him in its torment. His waking reality was becoming a puzzle, pieces of the nightmare falling into place, creating a dreadful picture. In the quiet of the night, Agnes found herself outside room 13 again, her heart pounding against her ribs. The time had come to reveal what she knew. Taking a deep breath, she knocked on Alexander's door, her presence a silent intrusion in the night. As he opened the door, his disheveled appearance struck her. She carefully began to unfold the story she had held onto, her voice barely a whisper. The truth about room 13, albeit not in its entirety, began to unravel. Alexander listened, his mind racing to connect the dots. The whispered stories of the townfolk, the cryptic letters, his haunting dreams, and now Agnes's confession, it all pointed to a terrifying reality he was now a part of. He looked at Agnes, her worry-laden eyes reflecting his fear. As Agnes retreated into the shadows of the hallway, Alexander found himself standing at the mouth of a terror he could not escape. The room, bathed in the moonlight, seemed to sneer at him, its walls whispering tales of dread. The night was silent, its darkness closing in around the Halcyon Hotel, the whispers growing louder with each passing hour. The hushed town, the hotel, and Room 13 were bound together in an eerie narrative that he had become a part of. He was now tangled in the web of shadows that the room wove, trapped in its sinister embrace. In the recesses of the hotel, Agnes found herself alone with her thoughts. Her words hung in the air, echoing the long-buried truths of Room 13. She had unchained the shadows that had been lurking in the silence for years. Her heart ached with a mix of relief and apprehension, the weight of her revelation pressing onto her. Upstairs, Alexander sat by the window, his reflection caught in the cold glass, distorted by the moonlight. The once serene town now bore a spectral beauty under the moon's eerie glow, its silent streets echoing the haunting within Room 13. His heart throbbed in his chest, each beat resonating with the hotel's sinister pulse. The stories, the confessions, and the silent screams of Room 13 were becoming his reality, the boundary between the dream and waking world diminishing. His eyes trailed to the diary, its worn pages filled with the echoes of past occupants, their experiences intertwining with his. He traced his fingers over the faded ink, each word a chilling testament of the horrors that Room 13 had witnessed. The pages quivered under his touch, the spectral echoes whispering through the silence. Outside, the night grew colder, the town sinking into a deeper slumber. The Halcyon Hotel stood as a spectral silhouette against the starlit sky, its secrets draped in moonlight. Room 13, with its haunting whispers, and Alexander, its current prisoner, succumbed to the uncanny serenity of the night. The quiet was occasionally interrupted by the wind's mournful howl, as if carrying the hotel's tales into the darkness. Room 13 held him captive, the spectral shadows and haunting whispers curling around him. A chill ran down his spine, each whisper a spectral lullaby, luring him into a nightmarish slumber. Alexander, lost in the sinister symphony, braced himself for the unseen terrors that waited in the dark corners of the room. As his eyes fluttered closed, he realized he was now a part of the hotel's cryptic narrative, a prisoner of Room 13's nightmare. As the echoes of Agnes's revelations grew fainter and the unsettling whispers of Room 13 grew louder, Alexander found himself standing on the precipice of terror. He had stepped into a sinister realm, the veil of normalcy shredded. The spectral shadows of the room converged around him, the haunting lullaby of Room 13 weaving a chilling tapestry of dread. Under the spectral moonlight, the Halcyon Hotel breathed a hushed sigh, its tales echoing in the stillness of the night. Each creak of the old timbers, each whisper of the wind, bore the weight of the secrets that Room 13 held within. As Alexander sunk deeper into the nightmare, the world outside continued in its silent march, oblivious to the haunting that unfolded within the weather-beaten walls of the hotel. Morning's first light slipped through the cracks of the heavy curtains, tracing a path across the room's worn carpet, stirring the shadows into a reluctant retreat. Alexander awoke, the lingering traces of spectral whispers still clinging to his consciousness. His sleep-tossed reflection stared back at him from the room's aged mirror, each line on his face etching a map of the dread he now lived with. The forgotten diary and stack of letters beckoned him, their weathered pages holding fragments of the room's haunting past. Each entry, each line, revealed eerie tales that left him chilled to the marrow. The words danced before his eyes, twining into specters of his reality, the past bleeding into his present, their ominous threads wrapping tightly around his existence. Downstairs, Agnes moved restlessly, her eyes falling upon the staircase leading to room 13, her heart heavy with the burden of her revelations. The truth, once shared, hung in the air, its weight pressing onto her conscience. Her gaze held a flicker of fear for Alexander's safety, and a silent vow that she would unearth the hotel's untold secrets to save him from room 13's clutches. Haunted visions began to intertwine with Alexander's reality, each encounter more chilling than the last. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, ethereal whispers threaded into the silence, and an inexplicable cold clung to his skin. The spectral echo of room 13 was growing louder, its haunting narrative insinuating itself deeper into his world. Outside the confines of the Halcyon Hotel, the town bore an eerie air of secrets and silent folklore. Its weathered walls and cobblestone paths echoed tales tied to the hotel's haunting. The townsfolk, aware of Alexander's plight, offered sympathetic smiles, their eyes reflecting a fusion of dread and fascination. As the third night fell over the town, Room 13 braced itself for its spectral performance. The haunting aura of the room bloomed under the cover of darkness, the walls pulsating with a malevolent force. Alexander, captive in the room's sinister grip, was drawn into a terrifying ordeal. His dreams bled into haunting visions, the room's narrative unraveling into a horrifying spectacle. In the hushed silence of the night, Agnes gathered her courage, ready to confront the shadows of her past. Her hands trembled as she approached room 13, her resolve steeling her against the chill that gripped the hallway. It was time for Alexander to know the complete truth. She found Alexander on the verge of desperation, his eyes reflecting the terror that room 13 instilled. As she unfolded her past, each word was a confession of her connection to the hotel and the room. She painted a chilling portrait of her own experiences, the room's malevolent grip on her life, and her attempts to escape its influence. Alexander listened, his heart pounding against his ribs, each revelation resounding in the silence of the room. His mind grappled with the unveiled secrets, their enormity threatening to shatter his sanity. Agnes's words wound around him, their chilling truth casting a spectral light over the room's haunting presence. With Agnes's confession hanging in the room's cold air, Alexander braced himself for the coming darkness. The truth had shattered his illusions, leaving him exposed to the room's malevolent whispers. Agnes retreated, leaving him alone with the shadows that thrummed in the silence, their spectral song luring him into a sinister symphony. Outside, the moon bathed the Halcyon Hotel in an ethereal glow, its spectral light threading through room 13's window, painting Alexander in an eerie luminescence. His reflection stared back at him from the mirror, a phantom trapped within the haunting walls of room 13. The boundaries of his world had blurred, the realities of the day losing to the spectral shadows of the night. The once vibrant hues of his life now echoed the monochrome of room 13's sinister existence. The hotel sighed around him, the old timber creaking under the weight of the silent stories. His eyes lingered on the forgotten diary, the entries within now echoing the chilling symphony of his reality. The clock ticked on relentlessly, the seconds bleeding into minutes, each passing moment a prisoner of room 13's eerie enchantment. As the night unfurled its spectral wings, room 13 braced for another haunting performance. The whispers grew louder, the cold air denser, each shadow curling around him with a chilling familiarity. The world outside his window held a spectral silence, the town oblivious to the terror unfolding within the hotel. Every creak, every whisper, now had a sinister undertone, an invisible thread pulling him into the epicenter of the room's dread. The room and its haunting specters watched as Alexander succumbed to the relentless pull of its reality, his world succumbing to the insidious lullaby of the room. He had stepped into the nightmare willingly, embracing the chilling thrills it offered, but the reality was far more terrifying. The boundaries between the spectral and the physical world had been shattered, leaving him at the mercy of Room 13's ghostly inhabitants. The spectral echo of Room 13 was no longer an eerie tale, but his terrifying reality. He realized as the night grew deeper that the spectral shadows were not his enemies, but his companions in this haunting journey. Each shadow held a story, each whisper an echo of a forgotten past, and each eerie encounter a key to understanding the haunting mystery of Room 13. As Agnes's confession echoed in his mind and the chilling experiences enveloped him, he realized he was teetering on the edge of sanity. The intensity of the haunting peaked, the room's spectral symphony reaching a crescendo. The world around him blurred into an unsettling narrative, the fabric of his reality threadbare against the spectral onslaught. The cold seeped deeper into his bones, the whispers curled around his consciousness, and the spectral shadows became his only companions. The room watched silently as he faced the haunting specters, each encounter pushing him further into its embrace. He was trapped in the spectral echo of Room 13, his reality woven into its sinister tapestry. His world now echoed the eerie symphony of the haunting, each note a chilling testament to Room 13's power. The room, its spectral inhabitants, and Alexander had become part of a chilling narrative, each thread weaving into the other, creating a tapestry of dread. The break of dawn painted a pale wash of light over the worn facade of the Halcyon Hotel. Room 13 lay steeped in spectral silence, the remnants of a haunting night clinging to its walls. Alexander roused, his sleep-laden eyes opening to the day, the traces of his chilling ordeal still etched into his consciousness. Embracing his dread was no longer a choice, but a necessity. His fear had become an entity, a presence that consumed his thoughts and painted his reality in spectral hues. He looked upon the room, its shadows now familiar, its whispers now a language he understood. He had made peace with his fear, the acceptance of it emboldening him to confront the haunting specter of Room 13. Agnes visited him once more, her expression grave as she prepared to share the final piece of the haunting puzzle. She revealed her darkest secret, her spectral past intertwined with Room 13's haunting. Alexander listened, the surprise stark on his face, the revelation changing his perception of the room's haunting narrative. Newly armed with knowledge and understanding, Alexander delved into the diary and letters once again. His eyes scoured the weathered pages, each word forming a link between the town's folklore and the hotel's chilling history. The narrative unfolded before him, the pieces falling into place, forming a sinister portrait of Room 13's haunting past. As the final night draped its spectral cloak over the Halcyon Hotel, Alexander steeled himself for the climactic confrontation. The anticipation was palpable, the hotel seeming to hold its breath as Room 13 braced for the coming ordeal. His heart pounded against his ribs, the deafening thump echoing the crescendo of his fear. In the dense silence, he challenged the room's spectral force, his fear transmutating into courage. He called out to the haunting specter, his words reverberating off the walls, his conviction challenging the room's spectral grip. His voice echoed into the silence, the courage in his words casting long shadows in the gloomy room. The climax arrived, shattering the silence with its terrifying intensity. Alexander stood his ground, his courage holding against the spectral force. He watched as the room's haunting specter shrank back, his words of confrontation causing a shift in the room's sinister energy. His understanding of the haunting and his newfound courage had fractured the spectral force's hold over him. A calm descended over the room, the spectral silence of the room holding a note of tranquility for the first time. Alexander breathed a sigh of relief, his eyes scanning the room. The haunting specter was no more, the eerie whisperings silenced, the shadows banished by the dawn's first light. His ordeal had ended with the dawn of a new day. The weight of the past nights lifted from his shoulders, leaving him with a newfound respect for the unseen forces. He left Room 13, its door closing behind him, sealing the haunting memories within. As Alexander walked away from the Halcyon Hotel, the town breathed a sigh of relief. The once chilling tale of nightmare in room 13 had come to an end, the town forever marked by its spectral past. The hotel stood as a silent witness to the haunting narrative, its walls a testament to the spectral echo of room 13. As our story comes to a close, let the lull of this soothing ambiance continue to cradle you further into your journey of calmness and rest. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your relaxation and sleep routine tonight. Remember, each day brings a new story, and each night brings a fresh chance to regenerate, to dream, and to become more of who you are. As this background sound lulls you further into sleep, I hope you find peace, comfort, and a well-deserved rest. Good night, dear listener. Until our next story, sleep well and dream beautifully.